What if I told you that the most valuable coins in the UK aren't gold or silver? They're pennies. Yes, those little brown coins sitting in your change jar could be worth hundreds or even thousands of pounds. Today we're counting down the 5 rarest 1-penny coins in UK history. And trust me, number 1 will blow your mind. Check your pockets because you might be holding a hidden fortune. Before you spend that penny, you need to see this. Some UK 1-penny coins have sold for insane prices, not because they're old, but because of tiny minting errors or rare designs. Collectors are paying big money for coins you probably see every day. So stick around as we reveal 5 rare UK pennies that could turn your spare change into serious cash. Have you ever held a coin that silently tells the story of a fading empire, the rise of modern Britain, and the final breath of an era that defined generations? The 1965 UK 1-penny coin may look simple, copper brown, and ordinary to the casual eye. But within its metal lies the legacy of centuries of British monarchy, the echoes of Queen Elizabeth II's early reign, and the final chapters of the great pre-decimal system that once powered the might of the United Kingdom. Today we dive deep into the history that most collectors never fully explore, the story of the 1-penny coin of 1965, the last of its kind before change swept through Britain and the face of its currency was transformed forever. This is not just a coin. This is a time capsule, and by the end of this video, you will see how a small piece of copper became a symbol of identity, power, and transformation. So, sit back and get ready as we uncover the untold story of the 1965 UK 1-penny coin. To understand the 1965 UK 1-penny coin, we must first travel back to the roots of Britain's coinage, a story that stretches over 1,000 years when pennies were first struck in the late Anglo-Saxon era. Around the time of Offa's silver pennies, these coins represented more than value. They were instruments of authority stamped with the image of kingship and unity. Through the centuries, the penny evolved from silver to copper and eventually to bronze, reflecting the industrial age and the shifts of power, wealth, and empire. By the time the 20th century dawned, the penny had already been an inseparable part of everyday British life. Now step into 1965, a time when Britain was finding its new identity after the Second World War. Queen Elizabeth II had been on the throne for just over a decade. The economy was modernizing, technology was advancing, and the British Empire had transformed into the Commonwealth. The coinage, too, was on the verge of great change. The old pre-decimal system was beginning to show its age, and soon it would give way to the modern decimal system. But in 1965, no one yet knew that this particular penny would become one of the last of its line. The 1965 penny was minted in large quantities at the Royal Mint. Located then at Tower Hill, London, its composition was 95% copper, 4% tin, and 1% zinc, giving it that rich reddish hue that collectors admire even today. It measured 81 millimeters in diameter and weighed 9.4 grams, a true heavyweight compared to the modern penny. The obverse of the coin featured the youthful portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, designed by Mary Gillick, her effigy without a crown presented, a modern yet traditional image symbolizing the fresh spirit of post-war Britain. The inscription read, Elizabeth II, Dei Gratia, Regina, Fidei, Defensatrix, which translates to Elizabeth II, by the grace of God, Queen Defender of the Faith. The reverse of the 1965 penny carried one of the most iconic designs in British numismatic history, the seated Britannia, a symbol of strength, unity, and the maritime power of the nation. Britannia is shown wearing a Corinthian helmet, holding a trident in her left hand and a shield bearing the Union Jack resting beside her. This reverse design by Leonard Charles Wyon had been in use since 1860. When bronze pennies were first introduced under Queen Victoria, the imagery was timeless, representing the pride and continuity of British rule. Now, as we look deeper into the historical context, the 1965 penny stands at a crossroads. It is a coin that represents the final confident phase of the pre-decimal coinage system. Within a few short years, Britain would make the monumental switch to decimalization on February 15, 1971, known as Decimal Day. But in 1965, the conversation was only beginning. The government was forming committees to explore how to modernize the currency system. The penny, though humble, was central to that debate. Its large size and low purchasing power made it impractical in the modern world. Yet people had an emotional attachment to it. Generations had grown up counting and saving pennies in jars, playing with them as children, and using them daily in shops, markets, and pubs. During this period, the British economy was evolving, industries were shifting, and the Royal Mint faced the challenge of meeting production demands while preparing for a major overhaul. The Royal Mint struck tens of millions of 1965 pennies, most destined for circulation. But despite the large mintage, collectors today find certain specimens in pristine, uncirculated condition highly desirable because they represent the last years of traditional coinage before modernization took over. Every detail of this coin tells a story. The lettering, the weight, even the sound it makes when dropped on a hard surface speaks of a bygone time. The copper tone would darken with age and handling, giving each piece its unique patina, a natural fingerprint of history. Many coins from this era were handled daily by ordinary citizens who lived through post-war recovery through the swinging 60s and into the dawn of technological progress. The 1965 penny was never rare in its time, but its significance grew with hindsight when decimalization came in 1971. The old pennies were gradually withdrawn from circulation. They ceased to be legal tender in 1971, but millions had already found their way into private collections drawers and family memory boxes. Today, holding one is like holding a moment in history, a tangible reminder of the Britain that once was before the monetary landscape changed forever. From a design perspective, the 1965 penny marked the continuation of artistic excellence that had defined British coinage for centuries. Mary Gillick's portrait of the Queen remains beloved by collectors. It appeared on coins from 1953 to 1970 and captures the idealism and grace of a young monarch at the height of optimism. Britannia's image on the reverse connects this coin directly to the Victorian and Edwardian legacies, forming a bridge between the old empire and modern Britain. In numismatic circles, the 1965 penny is often studied for its die variations, metal quality, and mint luster. Although there are no known major varieties of this year, experts often analyze the subtle differences in striking sharpness, tone, and wear patterns that distinguish high-grade specimens from circulated ones. Mint condition examples graded by professional services can reach notable values, especially in proof-like states, while circulated examples still carry sentimental and educational worth. To expand on the historical scene, the mid-1960s were transformative years for Britain. The social fabric was shifting, the youth culture was rising, and the influence of the British monarchy remained steady through Queen Elizabeth's poise and modern approach. This coin, minted during such a dynamic era, becomes more than currency. It becomes a cultural artifact, a silent witness to Britain's post-war recovery and to the gradual evolution of its identity on the world stage. As we approach the later years of the 1960s, discussions about decimalization intensified. The Committee of the Decimal Currency Board formed, and plans were laid to phase out coins like the large penny by the end of the decade. This meant that the 1965 issue was among the final full mintage runs before the transition began in earnest, with the smaller new penny coins introduced after 1971. The traditional one-penny design would never return in its bronze heavyweight form, making the 1965 penny a symbolic farewell to the age of Britannia on copper collectors today. Treasure. The 1965 penny, not for its rarity, but for its story. It represents the continuity of British tradition and the end of an era. It bridges the ancient penny of the medieval kings, the Victorian age of empire, and the modern age of industry and innovation. When you hold it, you hold the weight of history, not just in metal, but in meaning. So when you look at that modest one penny dated 1965, remember that it is far more than a coin. It is a mirror to Britain's transformation. It speaks of monarchy, art, economy, and identity. It carries the dignity of Britannia and the youth of a queen. It stands as the last breath of a currency system that served a nation for centuries before giving way to the new world of decimalization. And as every collector knows, not every treasure gleams in gold. Sometimes the richest stories are told in copper. The 1965 UK one-penny coin is one of those stories, a timeless piece of history preserved in your palm, a link to the past that continues to speak to the present. Have you ever held a coin so old that it carries the weight of a nation's history in the palm of your hand, one that has passed through the hands of workers, soldiers, kings, and collectors alike, a coin that silently witnessed the rise and fall of empires and the dawn of a new world. Today we unlock the forgotten story behind one of Britain's most fascinating and mysterious coins, the 1938 one penny. A coin that marked the end of an era and the beginning of another. A coin that bridges the reigns of kings and the tides of history. This is not just a coin. This is a chapter of the United Kingdom's legacy, struck in bronze and frozen in time. Stay tuned as we unfold every secret, every design choice, every minting decision, and the incredible journey that made the 1938 one penny more than just a piece of change, but a symbol of transformation. In the heart of 1938, Britain stood at a crossroads of destiny. The storm clouds of war were gathering across Europe, and the world was changing faster than anyone could have imagined. Within this atmosphere of tension, industry, and imperial pride, the Royal Mint continued one of its most time-honored traditions, striking coins that represented the strength, stability, and sovereignty of the British Empire. Among these, the humble one penny stood as a powerful symbol of everyday life. It was the coin that connected every class of society, from the factory worker to the royal family. It bought the morning paper, paid for the tram, ride, or a loaf of bread, and yet the 1938 one penny carries far more significance than its face value suggests. The 1938 one penny was the last of its kind to be minted before the outbreak of the Second World War, and one of the final issues to bear. The proud portrait of King George VI, before wartime production halted regular coinage. The coin's design was steeped in history, blending artistic elegance with national symbolism. Its obverse side bore the dignified image of King George V, designed by Thomas Humphrey Paget, who captured the monarch's calm strength and sense of duty. Paget's initials HP can be found subtly beneath the king's neck, a small signature marking one of the most respected engravers of his time. The inscription surrounding the portrait reads, Georgiv 6, D, GBR, Omen Rex FD and Imp, which translates to George VI by the grace of God, King of all the Britons, Defender of the Faith, Emperor of India. This title reflects Britain's global influence, at the time when the sun truly never set on the British Empire. Turning to the reverse side, the coin proudly displayed Britannia, the female embodiment of Great Britain, seated on a rock trident in one hand and shield in the other, gazing confidently toward the sea. This design had been used for over 2 centuries, symbolizing naval dominance and national pride. The design was originally created by Leonard Charles Wyon and had become an enduring icon of British coinage by 1938. Britannia represented not only the might of the empire, but also the perseverance of the people through economic hardship and looming war. The 1938 penny was struck in bronze, a metal alloy consisting of 95% copper, 4% tin, and 1% zinc, giving it a rich, reddish-brown tone that deepened with age and circulation. The coin had a diameter of 81 millimeters, and weighed 9.4 grams, making it one of the larger and heavier coins of the pre-decimal era. It was minted at the Tower Hill facility in London, the headquarters of the Royal Mint, before its eventual relocation to Llantrisant, Wales, decades later. While the 1938 penny appears in large numbers in records, its story is not one of rarity, but of transition. The late 1930s were years of change and uncertainty, and the Royal Mint's operations reflected this. The total mintage for circulation in 1938 was approximately 50 million pieces, but many of these coins were later withdrawn or melted down during the war effort, as metals became essential for weapons and machinery production. As a result, finding a well-preserved 1938 penny today, especially one with full original luster, is far more difficult than its mintage figures suggest. Collectors often note subtle variations between circulation strikes and proof coins produced for presentation sets. The proof version of the 1938 penny is particularly admired for its deep mirror finish and sharp detail. These proof coins were never intended for everyday use, but for collectors and officials of the realm. They represent the finest craftsmanship of the Royal Mint. During the pre-war years, the cultural and economic context of 1938 adds even greater depth to this coin's story. Britain was recovering from the Great Depression and preparing for the possibility of another world conflict. King George VI himself was still solidifying his position as monarch following the abdication crisis of his brother Edward VIII. Just 2 years earlier, The nation looked to him as a symbol of stability and moral strength. The 1-penny coins of his early reign thus carried not only economic value, but also psychological reassurance. They were tangible reminders of continuity in a time of uncertainty. The 1938 1-penny also stands as a relic of the pre-decimal currency system, a system that had remained unchanged for centuries. 12 pennies made a shilling, and 20 shillings made a pound. Understanding this old system gives modern collectors a glimpse into the daily lives and transactions of ordinary Britons before decimalization in 1971 forever changed. The face of British money, each penny held real purchasing power and emotional significance. People saved them in jars, passed them down to children, and used them as tokens of luck. The sound of the heavy bronze penny dropping into a till was a sound of familiarity across the kingdom. From a numismatic perspective, the 1938 penny marks a pivotal moment between tradition and modernization. It would be the last penny struck before the outbreak of the Second World War disrupted normal coin production. From 1939 through 1945, very few pennies were issued. The war years saw the Royal Mint focusing on producing medals for bravery and tokens for colonies rather than regular currency. This makes the 1938 penny a snapshot of peacetime Britain on the brink of global turmoil. When the war ended, the nation that resumed minting in the late 1940s was not the same one that had struck the 1938 coins. The empire had begun to wane, and the role of Britannia herself would soon fade from coinage when studying. The surviving 1938 pennies collectors look for details that indicate condition and rarity coins graded as mint state. Especially those certified by professional grading services, such as PCGS or NGC, can reach significant values depending on luster. Strike quality and preservation-proof specimens in top condition are prized museum pieces representing one of the last artistic expressions of classic British coinage before modern designs took over. But beyond value, the 1938 penny tells a human story. It passed through countless hands during years of hope, fear, and change. It may have sat in the pocket of a London dockworker or a schoolchild in Birmingham. It could have been dropped on the streets of Glasgow or used to buy sweets in a small shop in Wales. Each coin carries traces of that life, the marks of time that speak louder than any engraving today. Collectors and historians view the 1938 1-penny not just as a numismatic object, but as a bridge to the past, a reminder of Britain's resilience, its artistry, and its legacy of craftsmanship in metal, from the design table of Humphrey Paget to the furnaces of the Royal Mint. Every 1938 penny embodies a moment when Britain stood proud, facing an uncertain world with dignity and determination. And that is why this small coin deserves a big story, a story of art, empire, identity, and endurance. The 1938 1-penny remains a timeless witness to a nation on the edge of history, and to those who hold it today, it still whispers the same message it carried over 8 decades ago: strength, unity, and the enduring power of heritage. Have you ever held a coin so common yet so mysterious that it connects the story of an entire empire to the palm of your hand? Today we're diving deep into the world of the 1967 1-penny coin from the United Kingdom. A coin that looks simple, but hides behind it a remarkable tale of post-war Britain economic transformation, royal symbolism, minting secrets, and a legacy that would mark the very end of an era before decimalization changed British money forever. Stay with me as we uncover the untold journey of the 1967 penny, a coin that once jingled in millions of pockets, but now whispers stories from a nation on the brink of change. The story of the 1967 1-penny coin begins in a Britain that was transforming rapidly. The Second World War had ended just over 2 decades earlier, and the nation was still rebuilding its industry's economy, and global identity coins were more than just currency. They were symbols of power, continuity, and trust in the crown. The 1-penny coin of 1967 carried the familiar portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, designed by Mary Gillick. This portrait was graceful, young, and hopeful. It reflected a monarch who had ascended to the throne in 1952, representing a new beginning after the long years of wartime hardship. On the reverse side stood Britannia, the ancient symbol of British strength, maritime dominance and resilience, holding her trident and shield, facing the waves with calm authority. The design by Leonard Charles Wyon had been in use since the mid-19th century, appearing first on the pennies of Queen Victoria in 1860 and surviving unchanged through the reigns of Edward VII, George V, and even the brief years of George VI, the 1967 issue. Of this coin therefore represented the final great continuation of an iconic design before the modernization of British coinage in 1967. Britain was preparing for decimalization, a complete overhaul of its monetary system that would replace the complex pounds, shillings, and pence with a simplified decimal system. 1 pound would become 100 new pence, and the old penny system would soon disappear altogether. The Royal Mint knew that massive production was needed to maintain currency circulation until the new decimal coins were introduced. Thus, the minting of the 1967 penny became one of the most extensive in British history. Over 650 million pieces were struck, making it one of the most common pre-decimal coins ever produced. But despite that mass production, the 1967 penny holds fascination among collectors because it marks the very end of an era, the final full year that the traditional penny circulated as a standard issue. These coins were struck at the Tower Hill site in London, one of the last major productions before the Royal Mint's relocation to Llantrisant in Wales in 1968. The decision to move the mint reflected not only a technological modernization, but also the broader industrial changes in post-war Britain. New presses were being introduced, the country was digitizing its records, and the coinage system was evolving. The 1967 penny was produced in bronze, an alloy of 95% copper, 4% tin, and 1% zinc, giving it that deep reddish tone which darkens beautifully over time. These coins weigh 9.4 grams and have a diameter of 30.8 millimeters. They were heavy coins by modern standards, solid in the hand and built to last. The obverse side, bearing the inscription, Elizabeth II, Dei Gratia Regina F.D., meaning Elizabeth II by the grace of God, Queen Defender of the Faith, represented the continuity of British monarchy and faith even as the world around was changing rapidly. Collectors often note that although millions of these coins exist, most circulated examples show significant, where the soft bronze metal easily picks up scratches, dents, and discoloration. However, finding uncirculated or proof-like examples is still highly sought after, and many were included in the 1967 proof sets issued by the Royal Mint. These proof coins were struck with polished dies, giving them a mirror finish and sharp detail, making them favorites among numismatists worldwide. The interesting twist in this story is that even though the 1967 penny was officially the last year of production, with the date 1967, no coins dated 1968 or 1969 were issued for circulation. Yet some pennies with the 1967 date continued to be struck later, just to meet demand. This has led to debates among experts about whether all 1967 pennies truly belong to the same minting year, or if some were quietly produced later under the same date to prevent public confusion. The penny of 1967 represents more than metal and design. It captures the social mood of a nation on the threshold of transformation. Britain, in the late 60s, was witnessing dramatic cultural shifts. Music was evolving, the Beatles were changing pop culture, fashion was breaking norms, and technology was starting to redefine industries. While in the background, old symbols like Britannia and the bronze penny quietly slipped into history. By 1971, when decimalization finally came, the one new penny was much smaller, lighter, and different in composition. The majestic figure of Britannia still appeared, but the feel, the weight, and the aura of the old penny were gone forever. Many people hoarded the 1967 penny, not for its monetary value, but as a nostalgic keepsake of a system they had grown up with, a small piece of their daily lives that connected generations before them to their present moment. When we talk about the 1967 penny in today's collecting world, its value varies based on condition, circulation, and rarity. While common circulated coins may be worth only a small amount, uncirculated or proof versions can fetch higher prices depending on quality and presentation. But what makes this coin truly significant is not its price. It's the narrative it carries. This coin represents the twilight of pre-decimal Britain, an artifact of craftsmanship, design, and national identity, one that bridges Queen Victoria's era of imperial pride with the modern monarchy of Queen Elizabeth II. Numismatists often describe the 1967 penny as the perfect coin for beginners to start collecting because it embodies beauty, history, and accessibility, all in one. The portrait by Mary Gillick deserves special attention. It was based on classical sculpture and avoided the crown showing the queen with a wreath of laurel symbolizing victory and peace. This made it feel both modern and timeless. The image conveyed youth optimism and continuity after a decade of global recovery from war. The choice to retain Britannia on the reverse also reflected national pride. She had been the personification of Britain for over 2,000 years. And even as the world moved toward globalization, the symbol of Britannia stood firm, representing courage and unity among changing tides. The Royal Mint at the time operated with remarkable precision. Each die was hand-prepared with meticulous craftsmanship. Minting errors were rare. But when they did occur, such as weak strikes off center coins or die cracks, those error coins became instant collector items, adding another layer of intrigue to the 1967 penny legacy. As we journey deeper into its story, we see how this coin is not just about value, but symbolism. The 1967 penny was the coin of ordinary people used in shops, post offices, and transport systems. It passed through millions of hands and carried the fingerprints of an entire nation. Its weight, its texture, and its design all remind us of a time when coins were tangible connections to the state, to trust, and to identity. Today, as we look back over half a century later, the 1967 penny stands as both a relic and a storyteller from a Britain that once ruled half the world to a country redefining its place in the modern era. This coin quietly witnessed that transformation. In conclusion, the 1967 one-penny coin is more than just the last of its line. It is a symbol of British endurance, artistry, and history. It connects people from across generations and carries within its bronze surface the story of transition from empire to modernity, from tradition to change, from heavy metal currency to light decimal coins. Every mark on its surface tells a tale, and every preserved piece keeps the spirit of mid-20th century Britain alive. So when you hold a 1967 penny, you are not just holding a coin, you are holding the final heartbeat of an age. Imagine holding in your hand a single coin that survived the turn of the century, a coin that carries the power of the British Empire in its copper skin, a coin that witnessed the reign of King Edward fade into memory and the rise of King George. The 1909 one penny of the United Kingdom is not just metal, it is time solidified. It is history captured forever in bronze. It is the last whisper of an era when Britain ruled the seas, when the world's currency echoed with the might of the empire. And when every penny truly mattered in the hands of a worker or a soldier, this small round piece of bronze tells stories of change, revolution, and empire that no textbook can describe. And today, we are going to dive deep into the history, the design, the minting, the controversies, and the legacy of the legendary 1909 UK one-penny coin. The story of the 1909 UK one-penny begins in the heart of the Royal Mint, a time when the machinery of empire struck not just coins, but identity. It was the year before King George V ascended the throne, and this coin still bore the proud image of King Edward VII, whose reign had marked the modernizing of Britain and the transformation of its coinage. The 1909 penny was struck in bronze, a blend of 95% copper, 4% tin, and 1% zinc, a perfect combination to give durability and shine in circulation. It weighed 9.45 grams and measured 30.8 millimeters in diameter. And like every British penny of its age, it carried symbolism far beyond its material worth. On the obverse, the face of King Edward VII, engraved by George William de Sole, stood as a testament to the British monarchy. The design showed Edward VII facing right with the Latin inscription, Edward Ves Seventh, Dei gra Brit Omen Rex Fid Def and Imp, translating to Edward VII by the grace of God, King of all the Britons, defender of the faith, Emperor of India. Every letter on that edge carried pride, power, and tradition. On the reverse stood Britannia, seated proudly holding a trident in her left hand and a shield resting at her side, the Union Jack gleaming under her arm. This image, designed by Leonard Charles Wyon, represented the enduring strength of Britain's naval dominance and the unity of the kingdom. Britannia's presence on the penny was more than artistic. It was a declaration that Britain's reach was global and her empire eternal. The year 1909 itself was one of quiet tension across the empire. While the coin's design remained unchanged, the nation around it was shifting new ideas of labor. Rights, suffrage, and international politics were brewing the British working. Class was beginning to find its voice, and each penny mattered in the economy of the people. A single penny could buy a loaf of bread or a ride on the tram. It carried weight in the pockets of millions across Britain and its colonies. The coin passed through the hands of dock workers, miners, schoolchildren, and merchants, each adding invisible fingerprints of human history to its surface. Production of the 1909 penny took place at the Royal Mint in London, but also in other branch mints such as Heaton in Birmingham, marked by the tiny H mint mark beneath the date. This small detail often separates an ordinary 1909 penny from a highly sought-after collector's piece. The 1909 H penny struck at the Heaton Mint is particularly significant for numismatists because it represented one of the final issues before the passing of Edward VII in May 1910, thus bridging two reigns within a single design series. When we examine the rarity, the 1909 penny without mint mark was produced in large quantities, around 2 million pieces, while the 1909 H variety was minted in smaller numbers, around 5.4 million. Yet survival rates are far lower due to circulation wear and later coinage recalls. This scarcity, especially in high grades, makes the 1909 penny a treasured piece among collectors today. Examples in uncirculated condition can command significant value, especially those with full mint luster and sharp detail across Britannia's shield and King Edward's portrait. From a metallurgical standpoint, the 1909 penny represents the culmination of Victorian and Edwardian minting technology. The bronze alloy was carefully measured to ensure uniform conductivity and hardness. Each blank was punched, weighed, and inspected before being struck by steam-powered presses. The Royal Mint's precision in this era was world-renowned. Their coins circulated from London to Delhi to Cape Town and beyond, bringing with them a shared identity under the British Crown. In the social context, the 1909 penny was more than an economic tool. It was part of a global symbol system. Coins were used to express loyalty, legitimacy, and continuity in the empire. When people in India, Australia, or Canada used pennies bearing the image of Edward VII, they were reminded of imperial authority but also of the unity under one sovereign head. The coin served as propaganda in metal, art, and power intertwined. The historical transition from Edward VII to George V the following year added emotional and collectible value to the 1909 penny. It became the last of its kind under Edward's rule, before the portrait of his son would take its place in 1911. The Edwardian penny series thus ended with dignity, its bronze composition capturing an age of refinement, innovation, and imperial stability. Before the turbulence of World War I changed everything for collectors. Today, the 1909 UK penny is more than a numismatic artifact. It is a story you can hold in your hand. Each surviving piece tells a slightly different story. Some bear signs of shipboard use in the Navy. Some might have traveled in a soldier's pocket to the far colonies. Others may have been part of daily trade in the bustling markets of London or Liverpool. Each mark and scratch is history engraved by time. When we look deeper into its design details, we see artistry that modern minting sometimes lacks: the bold lettering, the symmetry of Britannia's seated figure, the rhythmic spacing between the words all reflect the craftsmanship of hand-engraved dies. The striking pressure and planche preparation produced subtle variations that today help experts identify original dies and strike quality under magnification. One can see micro-grain lines showing the metal flow during impact, a visual fingerprint, unique to each coin struck in that year. The 1909 penny also stands at an intersection between art and science. During this period, the Royal Mint began experimenting with more standardized minting processes. Mechanical precision was becoming key, and quality control systems were introduced, including weighbridge testing and metal composition analysis. The result was consistency and longevity that ensured the penny could circulate for decades. Some 1909 pennies remained in circulation well into the 1940s, testament to the durability of British bronze coinage. The cultural importance of the penny extended into language and literature. Idioms like "a penny for your thoughts" or "a bad penny always turns up" show how deeply embedded this coin was in British society. It was both a unit of value and a symbol of everyday life. And by 1909, that symbolism had stretched across continents in the colonies. Children played with pennies, Traders stacked them in rows and soldiers saved them as reminders of home. Now let us explore its legacy in modern numismatics. Today, the 1909 UK 1 penny stands as a transitional coin. It represents the twilight of Edwardian Britain and the dawn of a new age for collectors. It is the bridge between old world engraving and the coming industrial precision of the 20th century. Market values vary, depending on condition and rarity, but a pristine, uncirculated 1909 H penny can reach hundreds of dollars in auction, sometimes more if provenanced, or certified by reputable grading services like PCGS or NGC. Coin enthusiasts often pursue full-date sets of Edward VII pennies from 1902 to 1910, with 1909 as a critical piece due to its historical timing. Beyond its financial worth, the emotional connection to such a coin cannot be overstated. Every collector who holds a 1909 penny holds a fragment of an empire, an echo of the steam age, the Industrial Revolution, and the might of British craftsmanship. It connects past and present. It connects empire. An individual. It connects stories of millions whose lives pass through the same economic heartbeat, symbolized by that humble bronze disc. So the next time you see a 1909 UK penny, do not see it as just an old coin. See it as a survivor of a vanished world, a tiny portal into history that still whispers tales of kings, ships' workers, and dreams forged in bronze beneath the hammer of the Royal Mint. It is the coin that stood at the edge of 2 centuries, the last breath of Edwardian elegance and the first echo of modern Britain.